Yeah, so tonight we're doing under our banner of crowdfunding for performance, we're focusing on pitching your story and finding your audience. Because I always think crowdfunding, obviously, the funding, where is that? The funding is, what most people focus on in crowdfunding, which makes sense. It is a means to get money, but I always really like to focus on the crowd aspect. I think a project that has more backers, that's more of how I view a metric. I can speak, I promise. How I view success in crowdfunding is how many people have you gotten excited about a project? How many people want to see this when it hits the stage? So today we'll really be focusing on that, finding your audience, getting people excited and on board with your vision, with your ideas through pitching. So since we do have quite a few new names here, I'll just give a refresher on Greenlit. So that's the company I work for. It is a British-based crowdfunder. It is designed specifically for creatives, and everyone on our team is a creative of some sort. We started out in film and have expanded to theater this year. We have a really high success rate because we do kind of one-on-one guidance with all of our creatives. If you make a project on Greenlit, you'll talk just to me. It's all me. And we really help guide you through your crowdfunding journey instead of just kind of leaving you in the woods to kind of figure it out. Again, yes, check us out. All of these links will be at the end of the presentation as well, but do check us out at greenlit.com. And there's me right over there. I'm the head of community and theater at Greenlit. I'm also, again, as I mentioned, all of us at Greenlit are creatives. I'm a theater maker. I've crowdfunded theater projects before. I've been in your shoes. And I've also done some research on the future of theater, and that kind of applied more to my last week's presentation, which is available to watch. Adele has the link if anyone hasn't received it. But just essentially, the future of theater involves crowdfunding. So thank God I'm here. I'm gonna make bad jokes throughout the presentation. Apologies. There's one right there. So pitching, that's what we're focusing on today. So hopefully at this stage of where you are in terms of Vault Festival, you've got your pitch down. So when I say this slide, I want you to also think about, any future projects you're working on, in addition to, hey, if you are thinking of crowdfunding, or if you're just thinking about building your social media presence or marketing your Vault show or a future show. So these are the things I think you want to have in place. I don't think, and this is again for a future show, because again, with Vault, you'll probably have everything pretty much in place by now, that you need like a finished script to begin pitching. In fact, I think pitching is a really good kind of tool to see what's working in your script. Like if you have an ideal workaround, you don't want to go pitch to, I don't know, a theater or someone who's like a high up position with a half baked idea. But if you have an idea that you're turning around in your head and you tell it to your friend, you tell it to someone you've worked with before, so a peer basically, it's a really great way to sound out your ideas and also observe their reactions, see what works, see what doesn't work. But so here are what I kind of outline as the important things for when pitching. I think core ideas, that's probably the most important thing. I mentioned on the previous slide that I studied with Katie Mitchell, and as a director, she always says defining like the four, like it's like 3 to 5, but four core ideas is kind of essential before you start conceptualizing a project. And I think the same is true for a pitch. You want to know what points to hit. And maybe there is only 1 or 2 core ideas that you hit in a pitch because those are the main ones and the other ones come out later on, but you want to have those in mind just to make sure that everything's coherent. Any major themes in the play, the essence, which again is a very wishy-washy word, but I think you kind of, when you have a project, you can think, oh, this is the one like central idea that I'm exploring, or this is like what if I'm going to take anything away from it, it's this bit. So those are kind of in terms of a theater piece, the the academic, the more, the theatrical things that like make a project artistically viable. So having all of these things are very important, but then we move on to things like the selling points, like what have you been in before? What have actors been in before? What credentials can we bring up? What are things that, are kind of hard tacks, like, oh, this will sell. And so making sure that's also, you've got that artistic minded first three, but then you also want to have that marketing brain in there, and alongside that have a log line, have like a one sentence that really captures your piece, and it might incorporate all of these things, but having that like simple sentence that describes the piece, I think it's always, and this will probably come back again throughout this presentation, but having your idea at multiple lengths, so like one sentence, 40 words, 100 words. And again, you all did a Vault application, so you probably already have a version of that ready to go, but I think it's a really good tool, not only as a marketer but also as a creative, to reflect on your ideas. I definitely think pitching should be part of your creative process. It is kind of like applying marketing brain to creative brain. But nowadays, we talked about this last week, basically as an artist, you have to be in some way an entrepreneur. You have to use these marketing skills. So, having that involved in your practice, I think can only make you a stronger artist. Aesthetic. I thought there was a little asterisk there, but it's just a smudge on my screen. But I do actually think there should be maybe even a little asterisk towards aesthetic, because you won't be able to probably weave in the aesthetic to every single, like if you have a sentence, you'll probably not be able to, I mean, you might be able to say a dark or surreal, something like a one word description that might give a hint to the aesthetic. But I think that the aesthetic is very important in terms of, if you're making a crowdfunding page, that page itself, making sure it's like consistent and nice looking and all goes together. With your marketing, you want to think about what aesthetic does the show have? What does it look like when you perform, and how are you going to reflect that in the marketing material? And at the end of the day, all of these things, you don't want to just that it can be, you can be completely accurate about what your show is, and if it doesn't have anything that makes it stand out, there's no real point. So you really want to key into the things that make it different from other projects. Like you don't want to, I'm going to pull an example that I haven't actually thought of, but okay, if you say it's an edgy Romeo and Juliet that looks at class tension, okay, that's something, but it's like there's been a lot of things like that already, like it's not necessarily a unique idea, but if you take it a little farther, say I don't know, set in the future, again, that please don't, I wouldn't use that idea, but something that makes it like a little different, that's what's actually going to stick in people's brain and remember it for later and make people want to see it, because they're like, well, that's new, how are they going to make that work? So those are the things I'd always kind of have in mind when you're working on pitching. And when I say pitching, I probably should have started off with this, but a pitch can be, me talking to you in the classic elevator pitch. It could be at a networking event. It could be online messaging someone. It could be during a crowdfunding campaign. It could be in front of an audience. It could be in a marketing brochure. All of these are different types of pitches that I think we need to get comfortable with, because essentially you're selling yourself at the end of the day. And that's a point we'll get to, that a pitch, the more personal a pitch can be, the stronger it is, especially when you're the one doing the talking. So what makes a good pitch? And then another bad joke up there. I think as a creative, particularly as a theatrical or performance-based creatives, we know we are performers naturally, a lot of us, even if we have a background, even if we're now a director or a producer or a writer, oftentimes. So we are naturally, we know how to project and things like that. But I think, at least in terms of our training, it's referenced like, have an elevator pitch ready. And some good lecturers may have even had us do things like that, but I don't think it's emphasized as much as it should, because really it is practice, and it is incredibly essential to what you do as a creative. You know, you need to be doing that in every interview you're in, every networking situation you're in, and also when you're selling your show in terms of like on paper or on social media. And I think crowdfunding is a really essential and effective tool to learn how to pitch as effectively as possible, because essentially on crowdfunding you have to pitch your project. The only way it's going to succeed is if you pitch to everyone you've ever talked to in every room you're in on every platform imaginable. I mean, that's not the only way it's going to succeed, but that's how you're going to succeed to the fullest. So it basically pushes you to learn how to tailor your pitch and your ideas to different audiences, and different contexts. And again, if anyone has any questions at any point, please do put it in the chat. I love questions. All right, so here are some kind of basics of pitching and where we might mess up. So this could be a question of, what do you think is more important, content versus performance? And I have spoiled the answer to that question. But, you know, you might think, oh, well, you know, the idea at the end of the day is what's going to shine. And, you know, that's kind of true, but at the end of the day, it really is, if someone's engaging, like you've seen someone who can just kind of BS their way through a presentation because they're so engaging and likable, and their idea might not be as good as yours, but if they have engaged and captured the audience better than you, they might have get the opportunity. They might be, you know, called upon to do something because they were able to kind of work a room. It's essentially the song Popular from Wicked. On the brain. So it's very important to have a strong performance while pitching, because your content will just, if you talk like this and you're not really enthusiastic with your idea and you don't make like eye contact with anyone and you mumble a bit and you might be a little flustered, and you're just trying to get your words out, no one wants to listen to that. And if no one listens, no one's going to care about your idea. So getting that performance, like, again, as I said before, a lot of us are theater people. We're performers naturally. So it might not be, I mean, but sometimes there is, you know, we might be okay on stage in a role, but putting ourselves forward, is the hard part. And that leads me to the second part. So nerves. I think people think, oh, I'm not naturally, you know, an extroverted kind of charming person. Not that extroverts have to be, but you know what I mean? I'm not the people person. I'm not going to be good at pitching. And I think that that's the wrong mentality to take, because it's actually, you know, when people like charm a room, I think the thing that it's not confidence that people are latching onto. It's authenticity. So even if you are nervous, you know, as long as you're keeping it together, as long as you're being audible, you're not speaking too fast, you're not mumbling, all of which things can be practiced. Nerves are okay. In fact, they might even endear your audience to you. But you want to be, you want to not let your nerves beat you. But if you can channel it into something, what's the word? Something that's helpful. There's a specific word for it that I can't think of. But as an asset, because authenticity, I think, above all else, sells. Oh, that's a great point, Rita. So you can reference being nervous even, as long as you don't lean on being nervous, in my experience, at least. Yep. Sometimes it helps to acknowledge that nerves are there. Definitely. I think a little I'm nerves, or just like one little reference to it. It makes me feel like, aw, I want to help them out. Like, even if you're shaking a little bit at the beginning, that's fine. Like, if you get through it, if you overcome it, it's like you're the little engine that could. I don't know if you guys love trains in the UK. I bet you had the little engine that could. But you know, people want to root for you because you are positioned as the underdog then. But if you kind of take it to an extreme and you don't want it to beat you, right? You want to defeat your nerves. You don't want the nerves to defeat you. But don't worry if you're not naturally, you know, the life of the party, all eyes on you type person. I think people don't need that. What they need is authenticity. Oh, and the one thing that I think nerves can lead to is talking and talking and talking forever. Conciseness is key. Like that's always, always, always. I think in any situation, conciseness is key. No one wants to, get information and have it take longer than it needs to. That doesn't mean that every single pitch should be short, but if you have 2 minutes to give a pitch, plan for it to be 90 seconds. Only include what you need to for each varying length. I'd say like have those varying lengths planned out before you pitch. I don't think that doesn't mean that you should have like a written out thing it's like this is exactly 2 minutes and I'm going to recite it the same way each time. Don't do that, because that again is not authentic. But if you have, okay, when it's 2 minutes, a 2-minute pitch, I'm going to aim for it to be 90 seconds and I'm going to include this point, this point, this point, and this point. I've had, because my job at Greenlit essentially is listening to people pitch, tell me about their projects that they're working on. And I have had meetings where it's a whole 20 minutes is set to just explaining a plot of a short film. So probably those 20 minutes are longer than the short film itself. And yeah, that the thing is that a whole pitch is about leaving people wanting more, right? You don't want to give it all away. You want to just leave them a little bit pregnant, because then they're gonna, that's a saying I heard, get people a little bit pregnant, because you can't be a little bit pregnant. You're gonna have to go whole hog. So leave people wanting more. Don't over-explain yourself. Keep them excited. And then finally, how do you get this performance? Because these are all kind of the performance aspect of pitching. And honestly, it is all about practice, unfortunately. Talk to everyone, do it to the people in your life, your mom, your dad, your friends. Practice your pitch, observe their reactions, practice by yourself. I think it's more useful when you have someone there to feed off their energy and see how they react. But like, if you have trouble, like, okay, so say you've got like, sometimes you looked bored or disinterested when you're talking, or, you have trouble making eye contact, practice in a mirror and like look at yourself talking and see how you can be engaging. And then again, so you want to, going back to what I said before about, you don't want a typed up like blurb that you just regurgitate each time, but prepare your content. You want to have an idea of what you're going to say, like a little outline, so that you're not just kind of floundering each time. You want to have this in your back pocket, ready to go for when anyone asks you, oh, so what are you working on? Or, oh, what's coming up next? Know what you're going to say, and have that prepared. All right, so content. So I think the key things with content are, I think this is a very bright slide. It's less about plot. Again, I don't need a 20-minute kind of detail of then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. It's more about an idea and a vibe. Like, for instance, if I'm talking about Hamlet, I wouldn't say, oh, well, this prince comes back and his father is dead and his mom is married to his dad's brother, and then the ghost appears and he tells him to take revenge on his uncle because he killed him, and then he goes and he kills like a royal advisor, and then the royal advisor's son, and then his girlfriend, who's the royal advisor's daughter, commits suicide, and then his friends are there and he sends them off to his death, and then finally he dies I may have messed up some plot elements of Hamlet. Don't judge me. But that didn't really give me a clear understanding of Hamlet. If I talk about, oh gosh, why did I pick Hamlet? The idea, it's about a young man battling with like in the lack of action and indecision. And again, I shouldn't have picked Hamlet, but you understand. There are things in Hamlet that are a good selling point that are not the plot. And Rita asked, thank you, Rita, for another question. I love questions. Please send in questions. Is it a bit like clickbait? This young prince came back home to find his father dead, and you won't believe what happens next. Yeah, no, I think that's a good example. You don't want to give too much away. during a pitch. I don't think, I mean, it depends on who you're pitching to. It's not like you can't say at the end that he dies, or you can't like give away the ending, but it is about, you don't necessarily need to know that about Hamlet. Like, I don't think that that's the most important part of the plot by any means. I think that's just like a convention of the tragedy. But so exactly, you just want to give a little bit away, to give them an idea of like where we are, who we are. And again, it all is leading back to that vibe. You want to give them an idea, and I know vibe is kind of a weird word, but I think it does kind of encapsulate what you're trying to communicate with a pitch. And again, the key thing is the hook. What makes it different? What makes it unique? What makes people want to say, oh, I want to see more of that? And then confidence. Again, nerves are okay. But I think underlying the nerves, you have to kind of believe that your idea is worth hearing. And so experiment. Talk to different people, see where they react. If people seem to like, you're in the middle of talking and their eyes drift over, or they look a little bored, make note of that. Is that a problem with your pitch? Is that a problem with your script or idea? Note that, and so that next time you do it, change it up, so that by the time you're pitching in front of someone important, you feel confident with, I know I've done this before, I know what I'm going to say, I know what works, but always be attuned to the other person. And then another big thing is, you don't want to go too far with confidence. It's very easy to overhype an idea, especially when you are feeling kind of a lack of confidence. Don't tell people like, this is the best idea ever, you're going to be so excited by it. Like, have the best idea ever. Show, don't tell. I think that's such a key thing, because even if an idea is really great, if someone comes in saying, hey, my idea is really great, the bar is really high, and it's going to be hard to match that. And it goes back to what Rita was saying, like, if you're a little nervous, that's okay, because it actually might set the bar a little, like, you've set the bar a little lower for yourself, that you can surpass it. And it's always better to surpass a bar than not meet expectations. So yeah, confidence is great. I'm American. I love confidence. And I think you should be confident in your idea, but don't be cocky about it. Just be, assured that your idea is at the very least worth hearing about. Because I think most ideas are worth hearing about, as long as it doesn't take 30 minutes to tell me a plot line. But
Okay,
yes.
I have a question now. Is
Yes,
that all?
definitely.
It seems like a good moment to ask that question. So obviously I've got a play involved now. What gave it away? And I'm making something of a crossover. I used to do a bunch of stand-up comedy. Now I'm doing a theatrical play that is really heavy.
Mm.
The fact is, I love my play. I think it's great. I'm really excited about it. But based on the trigger warnings that I just wrote down for Vault, I would avoid my own play. I know that some people like this kind of content, but I'm really struggling to imagine pitching it. I'm really struggling to imagine that crowd. Does that make sense? Because when I started pitching it to friends, I found myself making jokes, and I had to stop really quickly because I was like deprecating my own play. Coming from a comedy background, oh, I know you don't expect this work from me, but blah blah blah. It's really sad, whatever. So how do I get over that? Because there are people out there who are into this kind of content. I know there are. I'm just usually not one of them, which makes it harder.
I think that you are actually like what you're kind of referring to about, even how you started off by saying my background's in comedy, this play is fucking dark. Like, I think to me that makes, like, if someone, as I'm not necessarily, I like comedy, I'm a very like light person. I might not see a play that has a ton of trigger warnings, but if I know it's coming from a person who like understands comedy, I think I trust you a bit more, to deliver, it's the idea that like comedy makes tragedy darker, and like tragedy makes comedy funnier. I think that juxtaposition is something I would run with in my pitch. But I think don't do it in a way that's like, oh, I like have only done funny stuff, and so like what, who knows what's gonna happen. Don't like self-depreciate the play while doing it. I think use it as a selling point. Say, yes, no, it's a break from my usual work, but because of that, I'm offering a fresh perspective. So kind of, I think your instinct is right, but turn it from a negative to a positive. Does that helpful?
No, it is because like I'm beginning to find that I'm incorporating my experience doing both stand up and poetry into this play. So like it's just giving me like a fuller picture. So my it's still really goddamn dark so far. I'm actually working on trying to break it away a little bit, but maybe I can figure out a pitch that will include both of these things. Thank you.
No, definitely, definitely. I mean, I think it is an interesting. I think actually this brings me to a good. I don't think it's in the presentation, but contrasts are always, I think, a really effective thing when pitching. Again, I do these for films a lot, so I've got a film example. But if someone says I've got a play that's like Reservoir Dogs meets the usual suspects. I don't know why I use two films to describe a play, but hypothetically, that doesn't give me a really good idea of what this is gonna be, right? I'm thinking, okay, those are two like '90s gangstery movies. I mean, actually, I haven't seen either film. I'm a theater person, but you know, my vibe of them, I'm like, okay, those seem to go together. Like, what's new? But if I say I'm going to make a play that's a Reservoir Dogs meets Legally Blonde, I'm like, okay, what could that be? That's intriguing. That's something that I've never seen before. Um, so leaning into these like contrasts of ideas, I think is a really powerful tool because you get to use something that people are familiar with to like juxtapose them and make something new. So if you know, not every single piece like goes with that, but if you do have like that kind of juxtaposition, I think you know that is something that people really can grasp, but at the same time be excited by. Great. So, how to prepare? Um, so again, obviously, as we were saying, practice is key. That's why crowdfunding is good because it's basically you're just pitching your idea to lots of people. But how do you prepare before you start? Um, so before you even, and again, I know everyone here has filled out like a Vault application, so they have you know the writing down core ideas and key concepts and some of the links. But I think even if you go back to the drawing board after this, see what blurb you wrote before, think about what you're performing, and you know say, okay, which of these kind of core ideas, key concepts do I think really are a sellable and actually integral to what I'm working on. Um, Thinking about those and then plan varying lengths with trigger words. So those probably will be some of those key concepts. So you know the things that you're going to hit each time that you tell people about it. Like for instance, when I talk about Greenlit, I always talk about how it's a crowdfunding platform designed by and for creatives. I don't, you know, have what I'm actually going to say written out, but I've used that kind of phrase before, and so it's stuck in my head. So it kind of makes things easier when I talk about it to new people. And I must like, and this I think goes into the next point of observe feedback, be tuned into to others. I think when you're actually like have those ideas planned before you start practicing, but as you practice, you're going to naturally come up with like different words and ideas and things that you know that just pop into your head. You try them out and you're like, oh, I like that, saving that for later. That happens to me a lot when I'm talking to people. Like I'm like, oh, it's like bespoke crowdfunding. I'm like, okay, I'll save that one for next time I pitch. You always want to observe feedback. If people like you know are nodding at you, if they seem engaged, that's a check plus. If people are like, oh yeah, um a little rude of them, but you know that's a sign. Oh, what did I mess up here? Let's go back to the drawing board. You always want to be tuned into others even past the practice stage. I think a pitch can like you can have the best pitch in the world, but if you're not an active, you know, if you don't have that power balance, not power balance, but you know, if you're not observing the person you're talking to, even you're talking, but they're the ones kind of, they're the ones in control because they're receiving the information. So you always want to keep them in mind. And so whenever you are, you know, whether a pitch goes well or if a pitch goes badly, you always want to keep it in mind. It's all a learning experience. And, you know, one bad pitch it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. It's something to learn for about future pitches of this project or a new project. I'm gonna grab my tea. Great. Great. And we've got a question about creating a new project on the Greenlit platform. So the training materials about market and audience. So this is just like a tech question, but if anyone's curious and submitting a project on Greenlit, the training materials about market and audience, I think, are on our end that I can send to you when we have our meeting for our bespoke crowdfunding. Tied that around. But yes, it should be a fairly simple process to submit. Just again, put in what you can, and anything besides like the title, and I think that what are the required things? It's just title and like a project description are all optional, and type of project. Everything else is optional. So just put in what you've got, and we'll set up a meeting. Great. So the key elements of a pitch, I always think, so actually my colleague Phil, who is great, glad that helped, who is a genius, they used to work at, oh gosh, this is going to be, I don't want to, I know that they worked on like the advertising campaign for Mamma Mia 2, Here We Go Again, with RuPaul's Drag Race, which is really, what better credit could you possibly have to your name? They always ask the question, why am I telling this story now? Because it kind of encapsulates, I can speak, kind of all aspects of what you want out of a project or out of a pitch. Why am I telling this story now? And so I've kind of come up with these 3 points, and it lacks that now a little bit, but I think that that's another kind of key thing you can think of while writing a pitch. But for like a simple one-liner, if you think of what the plot, genre, setting, this is what you're going to be getting in the basic forms. I'm trying to think of why do I not ever have examples for Legally Blonde. Let's say it's a rom-com, or is it a rom-com? It's a comedy, honestly, about a comedy about a blonde going to Harvard Law School. That's basically the plot, the setting, and the genre. Why? So why do you want to make this story? I think that that's the most important example of like an important thing in any pitch, is making a personal connection, because people want, oh no, my hair. People want to back a creative who, has a stake in what they're making, who, anything you can do to connect yourself to this, I think is better. So if for why, going with the Legally Blonde example, why? Because, I want to inspire women to know that they can be attractive and be smart. And then how, so why you're applying the why to the what. So thinking about how I'm doing this, how I'm achieving my why I want to do this. And I'm doing that by, by showing that you can be pink and still be serious. That's not again, don't listen to my actual examples, but I think, having these elements in your one log line, or your one, this is my mission statement, having that prepared, I think is super helpful. And having those questions in mind for whatever project you're doing is a key thing, particularly because of that. Why am I doing this? Why am I telling this? Because the you is what people are going to latch on to. It's what's going to make a personal connection, and it's what's going to make people want to back you, want to trust you, and want to hopefully give you money. So always keep that in mind when you're doing the pitch. Keep in mind that what, the plot, the genre, the setting, they're important, but they're only like 1/3 of it. It's really the you and how you're doing it that is the more important part. So this is kind of a little crowdfunding specific. So if you are interested in crowdfunding, the number one way to get people to donate to a crowdfunding campaign. It's important to have social media. It's important to have like some sort of presence, but the most important thing is actually direct outreach. And I think this can actually be applied to, if you're just having people buy tickets for your project. But this is kind of what we use, the kind of template we have for our people crowdfunding on Greenlit. The first thing is, it's really important, and you'll see there's a lot of blanks here, is to make it clear that it's personalized. The more specific you can be, the better. The one thing you really want to avoid is making it look like a mass message that you just copy and paste into your like contact list. The more specific you can be, if you can have a little conversation before you go into asking, the better. Again, the more you can warm up people, the better in general. So just a little intro that makes it clear that this is not a mass message. This is what I'm sending you, even though the rest of this message is content may or may not be somewhat copy and pasted. Next, and these are all, I think, like sentences each, maybe 2 sentences, but in general, I think of a message as being about four-ish sentences. Then you want to move on to the project. I'm working on blank, whatever genre, whatever, mostly genre, about whatever your core idea is. And we're currently running a crowdfunding campaign. Why, and then you, I think this is, again, overlooked. Why is it important to you? Why, how will it help your career? What story is it allowing you to tell? Why are you telling this story? Again, that's why I think this might be the most important sentence of, this is why you should help me with this, because it'll help with this, because it will reflect on me in this way, because it'll allow me to share my story. Again, the more individualized and personal that you can make it, the better. And then for close, now this is important. We always recommend the kind of, this is the only place where I'd say that we suggest specific language, or it's set in stone. Check the project out, check the campaign out. That can change a little bit, and consider backing. Consider backing is, I think, a really key phrase, because it makes it clear exactly what you want people to do, but it's a little less direct than donate. Well, we'd love it if you'd donate. We'd love it if you could give. But if you say, we'd love it if you'd support, people might just share it. They might, which, is great and all, but it doesn't lead to actual donations. If they come back to you saying, hey, it's not in the budget this month, say, no worries, that's great if you could just share it. That's when we go for sharing, but you never want to undersell yourself. A lot of people I've seen, and I think this is just a good application for life, but so what they'll do is they'll say, even a pound matters, does a lot. And, it's great. Any amount people give, I don't want to undervalue, any person's generosity, because any amount of generosity is generous, obviously. But, in the grand scheme of things, if you're trying to raise £1,000, and that's a low amount for a crowdfunding campaign, £1 doesn't do all that much. So you're kind of setting them up to devalue what you're doing, and give the lowest amount possible when you kind of have a qualifier in general. And I think this is hard as people. I think this is hard, particularly, I think, in like UK culture, there's a certain reticence to put yourself out there in this way. And so there wants to be a little bit of that self-depreciating, being like, oh, like, no, if whatever you can give, don't worry about it. It's hard to get past that, but it actually doesn't add anything, and you're just kind of taking up space and making yourself seem less valuable. So just cross out any moments of you backing off, like not doing the ask and instead deflecting. Be direct as possible. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, the more comfortable you'll feel with it. But again, that idea of just saying, consider backing, because anyone can consider backing, right? You're not saying you need to give, or like, I'll not talk to you if you don't give. You're basically, it's a soft ask, but it's a direct ask. Great. So we are wrapping up. Well, we're wrapping up the presentation section. I'll talk a little bit about Greenlit. And while I do, if people want to ask questions, if anyone wants to be brave and practice pitching, I would love, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. But if anyone has like experience or wants to share, please do turn off your microphone, or not turn off, turn on your microphone. But any questions you have, please just put them in the chat. I'll just briefly go over while people are thinking or potentially working up the bravery to pitch and get feedback. Again, Greenlit, we get these one-on-one guidance. That's the bespoke crowdfunding we discussed. Every creative talks to me. We help build we help what am I trying to say? We help give you feedback when you're building your page. We give you strategy, buy-in, and yes, no worries. Glad it was helpful. Tune in again next week. We're built specifically for creatives, and we have the same or lower fees as our competitors. Again, check us out on greenlit.com. And then next week, it's crowdfunding for performance secrets to success. If you've got any questions about crowdfunding, this is a great time. I'll also just have kind of the tips and tricks that we've learned over the years at Greenlit. And then I'm just going to leave the contact sheet up. If anyone has any questions, do put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm happy to have us end earlier tonight. So I'll wait another minute or two. And if not, we'll end early for the night.
Oh, I'm totally practicing my pitch. I don't know
Great.
about anybody else, but I'll do it.
Please do.
Turn my camera on too. Here is me in my blanket. Hi, everybody. It's cold.
Yeah.
So my name is Rita. My play is called Five Dresses I Never Wear, and it's an exploration of femininity and trauma, intergenerational trauma. This is basically a story of my family. I have those five female avatars, five characters, and there are five dresses. In fact, we're just figuring out how to incorporate them gracefully into a set. I get to tell the story of my family using different things I've learned. So kind of poetry, kind of theater, kind of stand-up comedy, it all mixes. It's a heavy play and it's quite powerful. That's all I got for now. Does that convey things well?
No, that was great. I think a lot of the content there is really strong. Again, I think you started off with like some really like core themes, which is great. You connected it to yourself, saying, it's the connections to your family. I think that's really key, and that was kind of like the central point. And then you ended, by saying it's a mix of poetry, stand-up, theater. And I think that, again, what we were talking about, the contrasts of different things is really I think, beneficial to audiences, because they know what these things are. And so they can imagine where they coexist, even if they don't traditionally coexist. What I'd say, honestly, and I think that this is in part because I also have my blanket here, it's of our setup. I think, a little bit, you were very authentic, but it could be a bit more presentational or performative in it. If I'm trying to think, not necessarily like a joke, but if there was like a thing, what I would say is think about something that's not necessarily like a joke, but since you've got that stand-up background, if you can think of, even if it's like not funny, I think I'm using this language incorrectly, but something that like leaves people thinking, or like being like, oh, that's a play on words, or like a twist, you know what I mean? Something that almost samples that combination of poetry meets stand-up meets like in your pitch.
So like, hello everybody, my play is called Five Dresses I Never Wear, and I will be wearing clothing on stage. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. But that's the idea, and it doesn't have to be the same each time, but something that gives us actually like a taste of the performance in the pitch.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I'm sure somebody else might want to try it, because I also have a question, but I'll hold off if there are other pitch trials.
Great. All right. Well, does anyone else want to be brave and try pitching?
Take advantage, free workshop.
It's all right. If not, I'll just do a little awkward dance on screen and wait for Rita to ask a question. Oh, yes. No, I think Rita, if you want to ask your question, feel free.
Sure. Okay, you can tell I was the one who raised her hand in class every time, right? Like
I love it.
Essential extrovert, but My question is basically, so I'm writing a play about trauma and I'm also producing that play. Normally, I feel like I'm a pretty well organized producer, but what's tripping me up now is that I'll write some stuff and then I'm suddenly out of commission for 3 days because I need to like get over the stuff that I've just written. So I really like the idea of Greenlit, but I would like to do it well if I'm doing it at all. So I'm just sort of hesitating about going into it because I would hate to go into it and not be able to deliver to my own, admittedly high standards.
Mm.
How would you phrase the amount of sort hours that I need to put in for this to work? Because
Yeah.
I can see that there is a lot of effort to pitch well and to crowdfund well, and I'm just perhaps after the vote run I'll be freer to try it again for the next festival the play goes to. But yeah, I'm just considering that because I'm not used to creating material that takes me out of commission quite so much.
Definitely. I mean, I think that it's all like that's so important when you're, when you are creating personal work. This is a side note about like just, mental health and theater. Take your time because it is exhausting and, it brings up a lot of things. What I'd actually say, one of the benefits of Greenlit is that it's not a computer determining like how long it takes and what it needs to be. It's just me, so I do really try to work with people to figure out what's the best model for crowdfunding. And it's not, we normally do like a 30-day campaign, but it doesn't have to be that way. What I would recommend honestly for this project, and also the amount of time that you need to put into it is based on how much you're wanting to raise. I've seen single people try to raise 50 or actually often successfully raise 15K, but like I wouldn't necessarily in your situation, I wouldn't recommend that because they were literally like, it was a lot of work. It was a full-time job. But can you raise 1K in 30 days by yourself? I think without it being too hard, yes, I do think you can do that. What I'd actually recommend though, if you're looking to raise it for like a future show, is like have maybe a campaign that runs through vaults or through your performances. So then when you're doing it, when you already are kind of in that headspace, so that you don't kind of have to have yourself in that headspace, like if that makes sense, like separately, if you're already talking about it, like if people are already seeing the show, you can direct them, hey, like go support it if you liked what you saw. And that way it also kind of, if people have already bought the ticket to be like the show and they've been moved by it, that gets people they've already bought, you've already gotten them a little bit pregnant because you've already, they've seen the show. They're more likely to support because of that. And also I think there's around event crowdfunding is something we're really like, look, we do quite a lot and is quite successful because people get kind of galvanized by other people around them enjoying or living through an experience together. So that's what I personally would recommend, and maybe have a slightly longer campaign. I mean, depending on how much you're looking to raise. But it doesn't have to be something where it's like a go, 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 go thing. That's how often crowdfunding campaigns run. But I think having it at kind of a more like studied pace, that, if you have the time, that's definitely an option.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. Then that's something to consider. Perhaps I'll drop you an email.
Great, please do. Right there, Grace at Greenlit.com. And then we got another question about how to better connect with a project you have not written yourself. That's a great question. I think it's why did you sign on to be a director, producer, or actor in this project? What parts of it do you like? Think about what things you do relate to. I personally, I do a little bit of writing, but I'm more of a director. And a producer, not necessarily by choice, but just because money. But with every project I'm attached to, there's a reason why I wanted to be attached to it, or why I wanted to know more about it, why I wanted to be on board with it. I mean, at least I hope most projects that we come on board on, there's something there that interests us, so latch on to what you're interested in. why you wanted to be a part of the team. And also going back to like that message template, I think, you know, if like on the most cynical level, if it was a project you're just like, oh, this will be important for my career, nothing wrong with that. That's your reason to, you know, that you connection of it will really help my develop my career in this way. And you know, it might not be the exact same pitch as the writer who feels deeply attached to it is, but you know, that still is a personal reason. Is that helpful? Great. I think that's sounds like it's it for today, which is totally fine. It's American Thanksgiving tomorrow, so I am making food. So it's all right to have an early night tonight. Please do send me an email if you're interested in setting up a crowdfunding campaign, or if you just have in general any questions. The link to this will be sent out by Adele at some point. Oh, thanks, Grace. And yes, I hope you all have a lovely rest of your evening.